but the story that has been dominating college football up to this point, the Big Ten announced its decision in the Michigan sign-stealing scandal yesterday. As Pete Thamel joins us right now. Pete, they really went to great lengths to emphasize this is an institutional penalty, not sanctioning Jim Harbaugh, but the punishment for the institution is that he can't coach in the games for the rest of the regular season, at least so far. Michigan has Penn State today. What's the latest?
Yeah, Reese, the latest is that the Michigan team buses are scheduled to roll into Beaver Stadium at 9:35 a.m., and Michigan has no idea if Jim Harbaugh is going to coach that game. Just minutes ago, I talked to Tom Mars, Jim Harbaugh's attorney, and he said they're still hopeful that there'll be a temporary restraining order hearing scheduled before kickoff, but that's not certain. So right now, 3 hours before kick, Michigan has no idea if Jim Harbaugh is going to get the legal hearing he would need in order to coach the game on Saturday. In legalese, Reese, Michigan's waiting for word on an ex parte motion for the TRO, the temporary restraining order, which was filed last night. And look, this is an unprecedented story, Reese, and it just keeps taking surreal turns. Obviously, yesterday, the Big Ten ruled that Harbaugh could not coach the remainder of the regular season. They used the word integrity 24 times in their ruling. Last night, in the filing to get the temporary restraining order, Michigan fired back with some really salty language. They called the Big Ten's actions fraudulent, unlawful, unethical, and unjustified. Will a judge rule that way? Will the judge hear the case before kick? The drama's going to go right up to noon, Reese.
Salty.
I know that Pete will be following that. Anything that happens, we'll be right on it. We've got cameras in State College. We'll be ready to deliver anything that happens as Michigan and Penn State get set to play, and the question about whether Jim Harbaugh will be there. Now, there are a lot of different ways to look at this, and it has become really contentious, and it's probably gotten well out of hand in terms of how it's been handled. But what's your reaction to the punishment and the sanctions against Michigan from the Big Ten under their sportsmanship policy?
Well, obviously, we've talked about this for weeks now. Unprecedented time for the conference, unprecedented actions that we have here. So we're all left to kind of digest this the best we can. The fact that the Big Ten would penalize Michigan, who's having an undefeated season, potentially a Big Ten championship season, potentially into the playoff, potentially a national championship, tells you that they aren't allegations. Well, sorry, guys. I said potentially. I said potentially.
They have a team.
But yeah, they do have a team.
Yeah, they do.
But to do that in the midst of that tells you that there are no longer allegations, that the Big Ten felt that they had facts and they had to respond. To me, I'm not surprised that Michigan reacted this way. The thing that I think you have to spin it to from my mind is what happens on the field. I think it either divides a team or it brings them together. I think Michigan already had a united bunch. I think this will take them to a different level.
Yeah.
You take Jim Harbaugh off the sideline, keep him on the sideline. If you're J.J. McCarthy, what do you write? Bet on his Twitter, and then he had a bunch of other guys that wrote that too. I'm just telling you, they're going to show up as a force today when they take on Penn State. That's my reaction on the field.
Coach, I think these players on the field are going to rally behind Coach Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if we've seen in a long time. And it wasn't just J.J. McCarthy and Blake Corum and everybody else. Tom Brady got involved. Everybody that ever has been a part of Michigan said, bet, bet, bet. This has galvanized them completely. I think we all understood that a punishment was probably coming. Now, the Michigan people think it's a bunch of BS that they've gotten punished for what other teams have done. Technology being involved, I think, is what takes it over the
different level, yeah.
For the coach not being there on game day, I think is a heck of a punishment. Him still being around all week, though, I think he can still have his fingerprints on the game plan. I know this stinks for the players who had no idea what was going on, and they have an incredible team. But a punishment was coming. I think this one, not as bad as it could have been, but certainly people are going to be mad about it forever. But Georgia fans were chanting cheater as Pete Thamel was speaking, and I think every other school feels that way. But a lot of football people think it's kind of absurd. Very, very polarizing, this entire topic, Des.
Yeah, it's very polarizing. We talked about how contentious it's made, different fractions, whatever side of the fence you land on. And we talked about this team and the NCAA. So you look at Michigan, right, with the NCAA and then with their own conference. It seems like they're in a star chamber right now. And you're looking at the rulings. When it's Michigan, it's sign stealing. When it's somebody else, it's sign decoding. Like, these are their arguments. When it's Michigan, it's in-person scouting. When it's somebody else, it's just a bunch of coaches, getting together to share information on Michigan from their heart. So there's a clear distinction without a difference, and that's what got Michigan people up in arms. But like we talked about in the meeting room, there are non-Michigan people who are football people who are very upset about this decision because this wasn't the only way the new commissioner could have went with the punishment. He could have went 100 different ways. He chose to punish him this way, and it seems very calculated because it came out so late yesterday. It was a national holiday, and now these young men, here it is, a little bit after 9, and they still don't know who their coach is going to be this afternoon. That was very calculated.
A couple things that do need to be pointed out, and the Big Ten addressed the issue that the other schools aren't being punished in the same way Michigan is by stating that these are just allegations that Michigan's talking about with the Ohio State, Purdue, and Rutgers thing. The NCAA has provided the Big Ten with what they call incontrovertible evidence that this happened. They have the spreadsheet, they've got video documentation, they've got ticket receipts. I do agree with this. There was a different way to handle this. I would have preferred to have seen them get hit hard financially, and I would have preferred to have seen them maybe absolutely shut down Harbaugh and any other assistants in terms of, not in the suspension, but in terms of recruiting. Because recruiting get coaches' attention. We're going to talk more about this in a bit. As it pertains to the field, you're the guy out here who's been a head coach.
Yes.
What's the big impact for Michigan not having their head coach on game day?
When I was on the sideline in Michigan games, I watched Jim Harbaugh coach.
Yeah.
I was very impressed. He didn't call offense and defense signals. He worked hard, the officials. He worked them hard.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, obviously, he's done his work during the week. I make a prediction. Michigan will win all of the games and end up in the playoff with or without Harbaugh.
Okay.
When you have a story like this, one would assume that probably it's going to follow all the way into the playoff. It's kind of the way it's going. Real fast.
It's going to be a great 30
The
for
fact
30.
it's a veteran team.
Yes.
With a guy like Blake Corum and J.J. McCarthy, there's so many leaders. I think that it allows him to take this on and use it as motivation.